Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, helping driven, experienced professionals remove career roadblocks to achieve more impact, influence, and income. Today, we'll be talking about how to brand for career growth. Right here live on Career Coffee Chat will be Anh Nguyen. Now, she is an expert branding and marketing strategist. And she also does a lot of workshops with General Assembly, who is a nationwide organization providing rebranding, skilling, reskilling for predominantly tech individuals, but all sorts of aspiring professionals. I'm very excited to have her on the show. And if it's your first time tuning in and you've never seen my smiling face before, my name is Aaron Urban or Coachy Urban. You can find out more about me at coachyurban.com. And don't forget the Career Coffee Chat podcast, which is also on all the major channels. Now, if you are just tuning in, I'd love to say hi to you and welcome you to the show. Please do say your name, say where you're from. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook this morning. I'm very excited to be talking to you about branding for career growth. A few topics we'll be covering today is number one, what the heck is a personal brand anyway? A lot of times that gets confused. And also, why is personal branding important and how to showcase your subject matter expertise? Branding is critical for your career growth and landing the job you want. And whether or not you are actively looking as a job seeker, or whether you are just interested in growing your career, moving up the career ladder, your brand is where it's at and where it all starts. So I'm excited to have Anh Nguyen on the show with us this morning to discuss branding for career growth. So if you're just tuning in again, say hi, say where you're from. I'd love to welcome you to the show. We will be pausing from time to time to answer your questions, so please do ask them. This is the whole purpose of the Career Coffee Chat show. Hi, Patricia. Nice to see you tuning in from Katy, Texas, from LinkedIn. Also from LinkedIn, Jesse tuning in from Fulshire. He says less mosquitoes, better temperatures. He's rubbing it in. And Katie, nice to see you all the way from Clear Lake, also tuning in. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to Anh Nguyen. Hi, Anh.
Hello, good morning. Hello to everyone joining us, Patricia, Jesse, and Katie. Katie, I'm in the Clear Lake area myself, so we're practically neighbors.
Yeah, did you see Jesse's rubbing it in about his mosquitoes? He's got
I saw that.
That's not nice.
No, not nice. Not nice at all. I'm waiting for the temperatures to get much cooler and hopefully less mosquitoes.
I know, right? Big old Texas mosquitoes. Yikes. Some things we wish were not bigger in Texas. Yes. So love to see you tuning in. And we were just talking about pronouncing names earlier. I'm very sorry I won't be able to now pronounce your name. It starts with W, W-O-J. I will just put him on the screen here. This gentleman, nice to see you.
Hello.
Nice to see you this morning. Joseph, love to see you. Phil tuning in, and Ruth. And Jesse's giving us a smiley face from his mosquitoes. So, Anh, we're talking about branding for career growth. And as I just told people as we're introducing the show, branding is critical whether or not you are job seeking or just interested in moving up the career ladder, promoting yourself as a professional. Mm-hmm. But hey, what the heck is a brand anyway?
So often when folks think of brands, they think of companies, corporate brands, like Nike, Starbucks. Those are brands that we are familiar with. But you yourself are a brand, and many people don't think of it in those terms. And really, what it is your reputation. It's personal branding has become this buzzword, but it's your reputation and what you want to be known for. So your subject matter expertise and building your reputation around your subject matter expertise and then being known for it, allowing yourself to be known for it. So we'll talk about some different channels and ways to get your subject matter expertise out. But at its very basic core, that's what personal branding is.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you mentioned being known for your expertise, because I know a lot of people who struggle with sharing their expertise or quote unquote tooting their own horn.
Yes.
And what's the difference between branding and tooting your own horn?
So there is a little bit of tooting your own horn in branding. There is a fine balance, as you mentioned, because sometimes you can go overboard on that. But really being known for it is, again, very basically just sharing content or writing content, whether it be your own content, original content. And when I say content, I mean blogs, articles, anything that you may write that reflects and highlights and features your subject matter expertise. But at the same time, you can also find others who have written about the area that you're an expert in and share their content and then add your own 2 cents to it, your own insights, basically. And again, that helps to reflect your expertise, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel and write original content constantly, because content writing is time consuming, can be time consuming.
Right, right. So it's interesting you mentioned that. One of the things I would like to ask you is when it comes to branding, everything, almost everything you put out there can be a part of your brand. And that includes, whether or not you smile to, that overused acronym, like, you might be the, person. So anything like that, anything can be a part of that brand. But most importantly, do we want to brand based on where we want to go versus just where we are?
That's an excellent question. And in fact, I get that question quite often in my personal branding workshops with General Assembly. So thank you for mentioning those workshops. When you and I spoke earlier, we talked about the evolution of your personal brand. So oftentimes, when I have the learners that are in my workshops, they're in a particular role or industry, and they're looking to transition into another role or another industry. And so how do I make that transition from this industry to the next? And I use myself as an example because about 10 years ago, I decided that I wanted to move into the digital marketing world because I had come from old school marketing. We had print, we used a fax machine, all that, but I saw the possibilities of the digital world. And so making that transition, I had to get out there and learn. I looked for learning opportunities. I looked for content that I could learn from, also that I could share and start kind of delving into that, showing your expertise and sharing my insight into that. And so I made that switch into the digital world successfully because of that. So, if you are looking to move or make that transition, that's where I would focus on. Because regardless of what industry or what niche or what role you're in, or whether you're working for someone or you're working for yourself, your brand follows you. And it does evolve because you as a person will evolve over time, over your career span. So don't be afraid to have your brand evolve. You're not stuck in one thing.
Right, right. That's a very good point. As one grows and evolves, your brand should evolve as well. And I'll give you just a really quick, short, funny story that I was sharing with Anne before we went live. My brand is evolving as well. And you'll notice that I have coachyurban.com. It's also powered by upsolutions.net. Now, UpSolutions was my original LLC and will still remain my LLC and the parent brand. However, when I first went into business many, many moons ago, I had this illustrious idea that I would be a leadership coach and focus on continuous improvement and culture changes, which is what I've done in corporate and love to do. After doing that for a year or so, I realized that's not really what I want to do anymore. And I really loved the career development part of it, started focusing on that. Well, UpSolutions means nothing to anybody, really. And in fact, no sooner than I hit the submit button on my LLC for Urban Professional Performance Solutions, quote unquote, UpSolutions, I thought it'd be cute, shorten it, right? My husband walked in, who is a PhD mechanical engineer, and he looks at it and goes, yeah, UPP Solutions. Okay. And I was like, oh, I sound like I'm selling adult diapers. And it's been like that ever since.
What a way to start a presentation. You start with something humorous. People will remember you for that.
People always remember, adult diapers and UPP Solutions. So it always makes me cringe when people say UPP Solutions. I'm like, no, it's UpSolutions, right? But in the process of rebranding, because I'm evolving, my coaching business has obviously evolved very much into the career space, and I want to be able to reflect that and make it easy for people to associate my brand with what I do and vice versa. So with that being said, and what would you recommend for people, that don't want to necessarily post a ton on social media, or What's the right platform? What should they do? Is Facebook matter? Do I need to be on Instagram, or is it just really LinkedIn? What is it, and what are the targets for each one? Because it will vary depending on what you want to do. If you're an entrepreneur and let's say you're an artist, well, you better be on Instagram because it's a visual platform, right?
Absolutely. And you started it already right there saying, where is your community going to be? Where's your audience going to be? If you know that the folks that you want to reach are mainly on LinkedIn, then double down on your efforts on LinkedIn. If you're an artist or more creative type, and your niche is more creative, then Instagram is a great platform because, as you mentioned, it's very visual. And it's just, I love Instagram because it's beautifully visual. If your people are on Twitter, get on Twitter. You don't have to be everywhere, but figure out where your audience is going to be most likely, or where the most of them are, where your reach is higher, then focus on that particular platform. For most of us, being professionals, whether we are in the corporate world or whether we are entrepreneurs or whatnot, LinkedIn is going to be a very valid channel for us to stake our claim on. Again, I'm going to use myself as an example. I am a very active Twitter user. So if you guys like Twitter, come find me. And I was on a lot of Twitter chats. If you're not familiar with Twitter chats, it's basically a conversation typically on the same day of the week at the same time over various topics. You can find a chat just about everything. And so I got on Twitter and engaged with folks in chats that were focused around marketing and social media, and it helped me to make connections via those chats, but also helped me to learn and kind of showcase my subject matter expertise. And then from there, I was able to connect with those folks from Twitter onto LinkedIn and so on. And I gained the attention of IBM because of my activity on Twitter. So
Twitter's not a bad thing for verbal vomiting then.
No, there is a lot of verbal vomiting on Twitter, but you can find a lot of valuable conversations. And oftentimes that's what I will advise folks. If you think of Twitter in terms of having a conversation around a particular subject matter or focus or topic, or using it as a search tool to find those who are like-minded individuals who are interested in the same topics as you. So that's a great way to use Twitter. And that's my best advice for trying to figure out where you should be. And if nothing else, don't feel overwhelmed because you have to be everywhere. You don't have to be everywhere. Just because it's there doesn't mean you have to be there. It's where you're going to find your people.
Right. And it can really just be one social platform.
Exactly.
Not only I'm most active on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn any day of the week, pretty much. So, and it's not that I want to ignore the other platforms. Those are also important. However, LinkedIn gets the majority of my attention. So you don't really be anywhere else. So I did have a great question from Rachel, who actually sent this to me before the show. And if you have any questions, by the way, all of you tuned in to the show to learn about branding for your career growth, let me know what that is. Pop it in the chat. Say your name. Say, ask your questions. What's your questions? And most importantly, what are your roadblocks when it comes to branding, other than just understanding what the heck it is anyway? What are some of those roadblocks that you struggle with? Because we want to be able to help you right now live on the show.
Absolutely.
Rachel had a great question. She said, I'm interested in learning more about how to shift a personal brand from one subject matter to another. And she also said, for example, she's moving from oil and gas, big shock, to include a variety of other energies, maybe like renewable, solar, wind, etc. And she's going from an individual contributor. So she's really doing two shifts. She's going from an individual contributor to something like a product or project manager or engineer to a team leader. Okay, she wants to be a team leader. So she knows it's a lot of different shifts happening at once. What's your advice for Rachel?
Sure. So going from oil and gas to renewable energies, there's some shift there, obviously, because it's renewable energies, but it's not a huge gap. I don't know much about the energy industry, so I apologize if I'm misspeaking in that. So I think you can still share that content going into new renewable energies. Like, look for companies that are in that space that you admire or want to follow. Follow them on LinkedIn. Typically, those types of companies will have a LinkedIn company page. It's super easy to follow them. And then start sharing, finding that content, that information about renewable energies that really reflects the role that you want to be in as well, or in, I shouldn't say about renewable energies, but in the renewable energies in that role. So if you're, and then also you're looking to shift into a team lead role, look for content or information about leadership or leadership development, being a team lead, and share that type of content as well. Again, adding your own insights. I always advise that to me, if you simply click share and it pops up into your feed, that's great. But why should your community on LinkedIn or on Facebook or wherever else care about what you've shared? And you've missed an opportunity to then showcase your subject matter expertise by not adding your own insight. So always take just a moment to, read what it is you're sharing and add your 2 cents worth. And so I think that's a great way for you to just start making that shift. Does that make sense? I hope that helps.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I'm sure she'll appreciate that. Also, I've learned the hard way. It's because we live in a culture of tell, and we like to tell people what our insight is, which is fine. How about asking a question? So it's all about engagement. And if you're interested in not only growing your brand, but growing your engagement and growing your network, asking a question. For example, you read something about renewable energies or leading in that space or both, then you can say, I read this and this was really insightful, or maybe you have just a really quick nugget that you got, they say this, what do you think? And then go into your 2 cents.
No, that's a great, that is a great way to increase engagement also, but also be able to share. And absolutely, I agree with you. Typically what I'll find an article that say, list out these 5 points. And I'll pick out the one nugget that I think is really great. I said, I really appreciated this point that this article makes. What do you think? Or what would you add to this list? Or what other point would you add to it? So that's asking for others' engagement. And then, but don't forget to go back and have those conversations with people as well. If they're replying or commenting to your updates or other things you post on LinkedIn or wherever it is that you are on or you're engaged on, then don't forget to go back and actually have those conversations. I see that so often, and in fact experienced it in people I know who've shared this great stuff. And I go, that's a really good, point you've made there. Thanks for sharing. And I never hear back from them.
Right. Not a like, not a comment, not anything.
Yeah. I'm looking to have a conversation with people. So, and that's another great point that you bring up too, is remember that you're there and you can, to have that conversation, because that's another way to show your subject matter expertise and have people get to know you for what you want to be known for. It's just having those discussions or conversations.
Right. And a few of you have tuned in might wonder, okay, what about the in-person space and why so much focus on the digital space? Well, An, you probably can share a little bit about why we're focused so heavily on the digital space and not just the in-person space. And if you don't mind filling in on the digital space a little bit, I can probably fill in a little bit about the in-person space moving forward.
Oh, too. Absolutely. Well, because the digital space allows you to connect with anyone globally. You're no longer limited to just your geographical distance or location. And that's why I love the digital space so much. And also right now, because we are not really able to see folks in person or do networking events in person, the digital space is very important. And so, but to me, the biggest benefit is being able to connect with anyone, anywhere globally, and make those connections. You never know, someone that you connected with in the UK could be your next manager, could be your next boss. And you're here in Houston, or you're here in, where else are we here? Katy and Spring. So don't limit yourself to that. And to me, that's the most important piece of it. But also, what do you do when you start searching for things? Where do you go? You go to Google, don't you? And so same thing. When folks are looking for people that they want to connect with in a specific niche or in a specific industry, they often are on LinkedIn searching for those folks. That's how General Assembly found me. They did a search for digital marketers, and so if you haven't you haven't optimized your LinkedIn profile yet with the right keywords, please go do so today, and that could be a whole entire other conversation. But that's why the digital space is so important. So don't forget about it.
Right, right. And you brought up a good point, optimizing your LinkedIn profile to make sure that you're searchable and found. Because a lot of people find me as a career coach because they Google or go on LinkedIn and search career coach, maybe there's a geographical location attached or not, and then I come up to the top. Because I know how to get to my algorithm rankings and understand where I rank, and I rank very high. I rank within the top first percentile within within my industry, and that's how I get so high in those search results. And that's how people just reach out to me randomly on LinkedIn. Hey, I need coaching, or I need resume, or I need LinkedIn. So they reach out to me. The same thing goes if you're a job seeker. So years ago now, actually, when LinkedIn first came out, I know I'm dating myself, I became a quote unquote, not influencer, not with a little bubble, that they reason of random people, not that. But I did become more of an influencer in my field, in my industry, because I started sharing content. I started, engaging on the social platform. And one of those reasons because I was frustrated at my work. There was nobody else to talk to. So I was like, I'll find people on the digital world, and I did. And as a result of those efforts, as a result of sharing articles, as a result of commenting, as a result of engaging on a digital platform, I was reached out to for 2 jobs, not just 1, 2, through LinkedIn. I never had to apply. This is where you want to be, ultimately. Okay, this is where you want to be. You want to be found. And one of the ways to do that is make sure that your profile is keyword rich based on where you want to go.
Yes, absolutely. And back to that question that was asked earlier about, I want to be known for this. In fact, I had a young lady in my workshop who was in the banking industry and wanted to do something completely different. And so my advice to her was to then update the summary that you have in your LinkedIn profile. Be sure to write it in first person, and think of it as very forward moving. So where do you want to move forward to in the next step in your career, your transition for career and things like that. So that's a good space for you to be able to really make sure that it's keyword rich in your summary. And then also go back through and make sure that the descriptions in your previous roles perhaps can highlight some of the things that you want to go into. Again, don't lie about your resume, obviously, but there are ways to highlight different activities, different skills, and different things, and different experiences from your previous roles to help make that transition.
Yeah, and I would like to ask those of you tuning in, what questions do you have about your LinkedIn profile when it comes to branding? What about the headline? What about the banner? Does it matter? Does it not? What do you mean when you say keyword loading? What about skills and endorsements? So these are all great questions. If you have any questions about branding specifically for your LinkedIn profile and optimizing that, please do pop that in the chat. We'll be happy to answer that. That's what we're here for, is to answer your questions and make sure that any roadblocks that you have are removed so you can move forward your career growth path. But for the in-person side of it, I did say I'd mention that. So when it comes to branding in person, it's not like you're carrying around a billboard, a sign that says, "Hi, I'm so and so. I'm expert in such and such, such and such." Right. So what do you do? And that can be a little awkward. And sometimes what we are branded for in person is very different than what's out there on our LinkedIn profile. So the in-person brand is really around who you are as a person first.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether you're Chatty Cathy or you're a quiet, Pam or whatever, those types of things lead first because humans are emotionally driven. And logic's next. And so we also want to be known, particularly for those individuals who identify with being more reserved, we want to be known for more than just what we do. Okay, that's important. So we want to be known as a person to those people we work with, interact with. And I always encourage any professional, particularly if you're thinking about making a career pivot into something new, to associate and connect with professionals in your target. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever your target is, connect with those individuals and make sure that you start building those relationships based on where you want to go, not just where you've been. So keep that in mind when we're talking about in-person branding. It's everything. It's from how fluffy your hair is or not to it's really everything, and it's unconscious. Okay, to be fair, no one's going around going, yes, so Erin's got curly hair and Ann's got straight. I mean, they're not doing that, but it's an unconscious cataloging of people's attributes.
It is, and you're right. It could be an unconscious bias, whatever whatever you want to call it. But it is very. I mean, just think about when we used to be able to go to in-person networking events, and you would meet folks, and you'd have that initial start of the conversation. If someone was immediately pushy or trying to sell something, or only spoke about themselves, what kind of impression does that give you? And what would you do? You'd quickly end that conversation and move on, hopefully to the next person. And so those are all very great points that you brought up, that it's how we present ourselves. And because nobody knows, if they meet me in person or you in person, they don't know that you're an expert at career coaching. They don't know that I'm a digital marketer unless we're wearing those signs, like you said. I'm not going to be wearing a sign.
I'm Erin Urban, career strategist. And they're like, oh, okay. So now we know what you do. Yeah. And oftentimes when you're going to a networking event, they do ask, one of the first questions you always hear, oh, what do you do? So you can tell people what you do. And if it's very technical, what I would encourage you to do is focus on the output. So what is it that your results are? And that helps people associate to what you do. Take, for example, cybersecurity. Could mean anything. One of my clients said, well, when you make purchases on Amazon or online, well, I'm the guy that makes sure that those purchases are secure. Okay, cool. Do you have my credit card information? No.
No, that's a great point, because so often when you meet folks, they go, oh, I do such and such and such, because everybody's told they have to have this elevator pitch. And oftentimes I sit there and I go, okay, they just threw all these words at me, but what exactly do they do?
No idea what you did. So make sure it's friendly to the layperson. But when we're talking about the office environment, those people who you work with, what's your personal brand with those individuals? Was oftentimes, again, leading with the emotion. What's the perception? So it's all about perception management, both in person and online. And in person, I would recommend as a coach that you find your personal board of directors, your tribe, or those people you trust and can connect with as a mentor or what have you, that will give you honest feedback. Yeah. Because sometimes we have a brand that we don't want. And I know that personally because I was known as a steamroller as a very young professional. I not out until much later, which fueled a career pivot. So Katie asked, she said, regarding LinkedIn, what if you have a professional job and a side hustle?
That's great question, Katie. Great question. So often, so many of us do, right? Because of just different interests, but also economic necessity, whatever that may be. And so, Katie, do you mind me asking real quick, is your side business within the same industry as your professional job? And as while you're typing in your answer, as long as your professional job is okay with you having a side business or a side hustle, then there's nothing wrong with you listing it under your experience as well, because perhaps that is where you want to move to in the future. You may want to leave your corporate job and move into this other space that you're building your own business. And so why would you not have people already start knowing you for it, or getting known for that particular role or business? And so again, there's nothing wrong with it. I will say there is a caveat, and that you and I talked about this a little bit at the very beginning. I have a friend that I've known for a very long time. She has been in the advertising world, and now she's got all these different interests and different business interests. And so she's a health coach, and she's doing marketing, and she's helping her husband's chiropractic business. And to me, even though I know her, I'm still a little confused as to what it is she does. And so I think there's nothing wrong in showcasing your different interests or your side hustle, your side business, but be consistent about what it is that you're sharing. Because, one day she's sharing marketing tips and the next day she's sharing, recipes for her health coach business. And
it's very confusing.
It is. It's very confusing to me. HSC professional to real estate. Okay. Yeah.
Katie is actually, hopefully she doesn't mind me saying this, but we're working together, partnering on her career trajectory. And one of the things we're working on doing is making sure that her real estate, if she wants to do a certain type of work, say facilities, for example, that those two work types have the same story. So they're kind of fueling that same path.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. Because as an HSE professional, and if you go into, say, facilities or commercial real estate, there's some overlap with the safety management topics and things like that. So there's some way to transition that easily. And as I mentioned, it's, again, if your current boss is okay with you having this side hustle, then I see nothing wrong with obviously listing it and then sharing that information. And then real estate, depending on whether it's commercial or residential, Instagram is a huge space for real estate. So perhaps, move over there and just focus on real estate as your brand there and get to be well known for it. And so once you fully make that transition, you've already established your brand in a different channel that would be relevant for what you're doing anyway.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And to maybe your friend's point, she's kind of a health coach and recipes. Maybe Facebook she can build that brand there and then keep the marketing on LinkedIn. And when she decides what she wants to focus on, most of the time, make that merge happen. And so that the confusion comes in when, your platform is a shared platform between very diverse brands. Take, for example, I have some clients who come to me and this doesn't happen often, they have sales experience and project management. Well, what do you want to be when you grow up? You have to decide.
Two different things.
You have to decide. You need to decide. So you have a diverse experience. It's important that we tell the story in a consistent manner that makes it obvious for the reader to see your career journey, if you want to say it that way. Because here's the thing, our human brains are designed to look for patterns. And some people's have developed that more than others. But because of that, it's important that when somebody looks at your resume or LinkedIn or whatever information you put out there, your content, your marketing, whatever, that is consistent and aligned with that pattern. Because if it's misaligned, it's kind of a red flag and our brains go, what's that?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Do we trust that person? I don't know. So we don't want to send out red flags.
No, absolutely great point. Because I have been in the professional world for 30 years now. And so in that time, I've been a banker. So I've been in banking. I have been in the real estate business, working with a title company. I then transitioned into advertising and marketing when I moved back here to Houston, working for the Houston Chronicle. So those are very different industries, but I've made the transition, hopefully, successfully, because regardless of what industry I was in or what role I was in, my goal was to make some kind of impact. And whether it be helping my clients at the bank or making an impact on their lives that way, making an impact when we helped customers with their real estate transactions, making an impact with my clients at the Chronicle to help them recruit the best folks that they could, employees, whatnot. That was my one driving force, regardless of what I was doing, was I wanted whatever those actions or activities that needed to be done or whatever I needed to learn to help make an impact for my customers is what I did. And so that's how it helped me to transition into different industries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you talk about your career contributions to the public, if you will, through the resume or LinkedIn or what have you, you drive what you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to share everything. I mean, yeah, I waited tables in college, but
I did too.
what? That's not relevant now.
Exactly.
I mean, so again, we want to the whatever content we put out there, whether it's in our resume, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's our conversations, we want to make that relevant to where we want to go. So I also want to bring up another point. I shared one of my Forbes article about getting promoted. That's a recent Forbes article I wrote. I shared it on LinkedIn. It's also on Forbes. You're welcome to check that out. And someone commented on that. A lady said, hey, I've got this new role as a VP, and they split the role. There's two VPs, and the other guy couldn't hack it. Now they've rolled his entire team underneath me.
Oh.
I should get more stuff, right? Like salary. I mean, where I'm working really hard here. Where's the reciprocation?
Yeah.
And she asked point blank, do I have to ask? And I said, yeah, you have to ask. I mean, when it comes to communicating your brand, sometimes people struggle to make the ask. Mm-hmm. Now I'll share that most of those people are typically women. Mm-hmm. Women, his research has proven, that struggle to make the ask or struggle to articulate their brand and their goals.
Yeah.
And when we don't articulate those, you're just hoping someone will notice. Well, how do they know you don't just like working a lot?
Exactly. They're not able to read your minds. And I know, as difficult as it may seem, as you mentioned, you have to articulate your goals and what it is you want to do. So in each of my roles as I went along, that's one of the things I did. After a certain amount of time, I'd sit down with my manager. I initiated it and said, okay, so I've done X, Y, and Z. So this is where I want to be. What else do I have to do? What steps do I need to take? What do you see me doing well? What do you see the challenges as? Because what I think my challenges may be different from how they view my challenges. And so that's a stumbling block within your career. But you won't know unless you have those conversations. And again, right. You're right. Women, so often we hesitate to have those conversations.
Right. And a lot of us have right now what we call survivor guilt, because we're in a pandemic, we're in a severe economic downturn. There's so many people in transition. So those people who do have a job have survivor guilt, which is not a good place to be. You do not want to have that. You need to let that go and release that. It's very important to do that, by the way.
Yeah,
and just
absolutely.
That tremendously for you, and also articulate where you want to go in any career, whether that's the next great new job that you are landing, or whether you're in a role and you're seeking career growth. Part of your brand is articulating where you want to go, because otherwise you're leaving it up to assumption that people will figure it out. It would be like me having a LinkedIn page without telling people I was a career strategist.
Exactly. If you only listed your previous positions, that's exactly what people would think that you were doing. But where do you want to go? How do you want to move forward? And that's oftentimes challenging for folks. But that's what you should focus on to move forward. Again, I'm going to go back and give an example. When I was in banking, I was in the teller department. I was a supervisor in the teller department, and I wanted to get out of the teller department. Not that I didn't love my team, not that I didn't love the customers I supported, but I knew there was more than just simply being in the teller department. And so I looked around to see what other departments were within the bank that I could learn from and really hopefully advance my career. But eventually I left banking because it was like, one of my friends had moved into a particular department. She started telling me about what positions were available, what was going on. And so I started making those connections that I needed to make with the managers and the supervisors in that particular department. And when there was an opportunity to move, I made that move. I asked HR about it. I went because there was some office politics that went on where they couldn't come pilfer the tellers and people in the teller manager department and stuff like that. So that's how I made that move internally. And you can take those same steps for making the move externally, even into another career path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and brand yourself along the way. Now, for some people tuned in, they might have the question, before we wrap up our time here today, about a couple more minutes for those of you who have questions. You've been holding on to it this whole time. Don't be shy. Feel free to
Ask.
pop them in the comments. We definitely want to help you in your journey and your career growth, whether it's branding or just how to articulate what you need to articulate, your content, yourself, whatever that looks like to move forward and get real results in your career. And most importantly, for those of you who might be tuning into the replay later, feel free to ask your comments and questions because we will see them and we will be notified. So Cornelius has a question. She says, what about if you have those conversations, but you aren't seeing the next steps being followed on the management's end?
Oh,
That happens.
it does happen. It does. So at this point, you need to be your own advocate. Above all else, you should be your own advocate. And if there's not any kind of follow up from your managers, then perhaps it's time to start looking in a different department or what for other opportunities within your company. You don't want to, or elsewhere, exactly, or elsewhere, period, where they would perhaps appreciate what you have to bring to the table. And I know that's really scary to think about and think, oh, what if I don't want to leave this nest, this comfort of where I've learned and grown, but don't be afraid to do that as well. And there's lots of ways to search for opportunities online, as we mentioned in the digital world, until you're ready to make that move.
That's right. You do have the luxury of having a position, and you can take your time, hopefully, and that search, and be a little bit more picky. Think about your brand. Think about your long-term goals. Just the other day, I was working with a client, and we were talking about her career trajectory, what she wanted to accomplish. What is her main focus? And we had to decide, okay, is it leadership, people management, or is that technical leadership? Maybe not people management, but leading by influence, leading teams, program management, that sort of thing. And we had to make that big decision. So I encourage you to think long term. Where is it you truly want to go that's aligned with your strengths, your interests, and your expertise? That's very important. And then align your branding along with that. And you can probably help people tuning in. Probably most of them, when it comes to professional platform, be leveraging LinkedIn. What are your top tips when it comes to leveraging LinkedIn to grow your brand?
No. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was, connecting with companies and people that you want to connect with within those companies. So if you're researching different companies that you want to work for, when you go to their company page, you'll see it's to the right. It'll say employees on LinkedIn. So those are the employees that work for this particular company. So don't be afraid to research through there or to use the search tool and filter out for companies and locations, and find the folks that you absolutely want to connect with. Connect with them, send a nice note, send a short note saying, I'm interested in what career opportunities there are with XYZ company. I thought it would be great to connect with you, and then go from there and start having that conversation. So those are the very minimum steps to start that. But then also look for learning opportunities for the role or where you want to be. And whether it be finding workshops or whatever it may, with General Assembly or other organizations that can help you upskill, look for those learning opportunities so that you've got those skills updated. Oftentimes, I think when I've worked with some marketers, they, the old school marketers, they've had a hard time transitioning to the digital world because it takes a little bit of learning to learn all these different digital tools, and they've been afraid to take that step. And so if nothing else, those are at least the first two things to start doing. And then, make sure that you're having conversations so people know what it is that you want to be known for.
And share relevant content, comment on relevant content, engage people on LinkedIn, on the digital platform. And why the focus so much on digital? Well, hashtag future of work. We are in a remote world, and will continue to be so. Even very traditional companies are looking at shifting to a blended or remote environment for quite a bit of their employees that can be remote. They are not coming back into the office. Even my husband's organization is probably not going to have him come back into the office, which is great for us. That means we can enjoy the country air and Well, I don't know about less mosquitoes, but
At least the country air. And please connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you. Just send me a short little note saying, "Hey, I saw you on Erin's live stream this morning, and would love to connect." And you're welcome, Cornisha. I hope that helped.
Yeah, absolutely. And if any of you have any last minute questions, please do pop them in the chat. And feel free to check out the Career Coffee Chat podcast. This show will actually be on the Career Coffee Chat podcast for about 3 or 4 weeks or so. So you will see that there on all the major channels, including Amazon. Who knew? So it's everywhere. It's everywhere out there. And I appreciate all of you tuning in, and I appreciate you, Anne, for sharing your expertise in how to brand for your career growth.
Thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a great pleasure having you. And for any of you tuning in later, please do feel free to pop in your questions, comments. We'll be happy to get back to you with those. Until next time, ta-ta for now.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.